The old Baginton Fields Special School was knocked down around 30 years ago. I visit the site occasionally, like the return to Mandalay. Once I cycled through the old entrance. The sound of crunching gravel under the wheels as I turned in instantly took me back inside an old Bedford van. I was 8 when I first went to this school. Just for a second I could see the old buildings. All that remains of them now is small bits of brick and concrete covered by grass. Nature is reclaiming its own. I once picked up a small piece of brick as a memento. This CD is an attempt to reassess the experience of special school both for me and the others that went there, and to look to join the current debates on special schools. You'll hear the voices of former pupils Steve, Pam, Rose, John, Eric, Jill, Alison, Julian, Phil, John and Alan. Also the voices of former teachers Hazel, Joyce and Dick. Looking for a large-scale map of the site on a visit to our local archive, I found they not only had the original 1951 plans, but several large stacks of documents related to the school too. There is an introduction to the school written in 1953 in Education.
The friends of the palsied man in the Gospels were not to be deterred by any obstacles in their insistence that he should receive the best attention available, and the result for him was complete healing. That same compelling concern has in recent years brought together the parents and friends of children suffering from the effects of cerebral palsy, and has concentrated the light of publicity upon the problem of these unfortunate victims of a mysterious affliction, the causes which are still the subject of conjecture and research, with, so far, no very conclusive results. In Coventry, the ceaseless advocacy of their cause by the local branch of the Midlands Spastic Association, together with the sympathetic concern of the local education authority, have secured the establishment of the Baginton Fields Special School for Physically Handicapped Children, which includes a department specifically concerned with the special educational treatment of children suffering from the incapacitating effects of cerebral palsy. The school was opened for the reception of these children in October 1951 and for the reception of children suffering from other physical handicaps in January 1952. The total number on roll is at the present time 97, 35 of whom are children suffering from varying degrees of cerebral palsy.
The layout through the front doors, after you got off the coaches, on the left, the corridor down was the secretary's room on the left. The nurse's room on the left, the secretary's room on the left, deputy head on the left. The far corner on the left was the headmaster's room. Opposite that was a classroom. Back up the corridor to the corner, there was a classroom right on the corner. Up the corridor from there to the left, you went through into the dining room, but before you went into the dining room, just past that on the left was the science room. Opposite the science room was a big assembly hall. Straight down the corridor from the assembly hall, turn right. Down the corridor there was a classroom right at the very bottom, and toilets, cloakroom coming up. But then when you went through the dining room, up in the far corner on the left, you went outside. On the first doors on the right was the orderly's room. Down the path, first turn on the right, building on the left was the art room and model room. Across the way from there was another classroom across the playground. You come out to that one, turn right, and in front of you was the domestic science room. Next door to that was a classroom. Opposite that classroom was the woodworking room. And then back into the playground was the big boiler house. And then they had a slope going up to another school, what they built, what we call the top school, which was a nursery school, and then the playing fields was behind that.
Well, I used to come in from the bus entrance and the wheelchairs used to be in front. And then you had the head teacher's room, you go down the corridor, there was a staff room. The other side was the class I was in. Come up the corridor, that's where the man I married, he was in the next one. And then you come down a bit, there was a hall. You go across then to the dining room. You went left, you'd go into the orderlies and toilets that way. If you turn right, it was where you went for your physio and they looked after the children when the doctors come up. And if you went out there and go up, then you go up to the top school and you had the field. And domestic science then was the other side. If you go from the toilet side and orderly, you used to go across. You had the woodwork, then the crossover was where I went to sewing, and the next one was the domestic science. No, I got no faults with Baginton.
Well, when I first went towards it down the highway in January 1957, I thought, what have I come to? There were all these buildings with washing hanging out. They were the outbuildings left over from the hostel, which it had been during the war, and people were still living in them. The buildings themselves were scattered, which had some drawbacks. I used to push these very heavy children in wheelchairs with tiny wheels up the hill from bottom school to top school, as we called it. But on the other hand, we had lots of space. It was adaptable. You could use different rooms in different ways. We had a good hall, we had a stage, we had a dining room, and there was a lot to be said for it.
Getting there, it was picked up every morning by a coach on the dot, on Bantam coaches I think it was. Then it changed to Red House, the Red House coaches, and that was every morning, and you got in school for 9:30, and then you was taken home at 3:30, dropped at the door every day, 5 days a week. And if you was off sick, and you just informed the school, the same as you do now, you just informed the school and they wouldn't pick you up. But if you was late, then the coach would go without you. You'd either have to make your own way there, which I did on several occasions because I was still in bed. And the coach cannot wait because they had a timetable to keep to, and they just had to keep to it. But they had so many to pick up, different areas, and I think there was about 9 coaches.
The first day at Baginton Fields School was the first day it opened, and there was only 10 of us, and I remember being picked up by a small 12-seater coach, and Mrs. Jones was the orderly, and I can remember each person on that coach, and it felt strange mixing with other people with disabilities, because I had been for 6 years to a normal mainstream school, and if it hadn't been for the constant bullying, I would have stayed there. But because it was wearing me out, the doctor decided that I should go to Baginton, and there I was for the next 6 years, living at 17.
I started there 12 months after the school had opened. Everything was new to me. I didn't really know any other education. We didn't know what we wanted to do when we left school. As far as we was concerned, we was going to school, end of story. We wasn't thinking of what we was going to do after we finished school. But all they was more or less interested in is getting your mobile for when you did leave school.
Baginton. I'm in the class with Mrs. Farrell's class, which was the reception class. The reception class attached to the nurse's school there, and that was in 1964.
My very earliest memory was my first day. I was brought in by my mum. This teacher that I mentioned earlier, Miss Phillips, or Mrs. Phillips, she was telling us about the milk break and how we could have a glass of milk at the milk break. And while she was telling me this, my mum went, and she was going out the door, and I ran to follow her, and these 2 guys who seemed like really tall sort of both closed together and stopped me going out through the door. And that's like my very first day. And I felt pretty bad at the time, but yeah, that was my first day. And that, as far as I can remember, that must have been in 62, possibly 63, but I think more likely 62, because I think I was 4 when I started, which seems a really early age to start. But I was 4. You did at that in those days.
I was trained for secondary schools, and my specialism was art. I don't know why I was given the job at Baginton, but I was offered it and I took it and I started. I had done, when I was at college, I had done a dissertation on special education. I always had that bent, I think, towards special education. And I can remember writing in this dissertation all those years ago that spastic children, cerebral palsy children, were another kind of child, in addition to all the deaf and the blind and the slow learners, etc. They were another kind of child who needed special education. Very casual, and my eyes were definitely opened when I got to Baginton. I think my impression of invalid children, handicapped children, had been based on Dickens. You know, Paul Dombey and Dombey and Son, patient little boy, sickly child. I had no idea, I think, when I first went there, that there were children who actually couldn't use their hands. I mean, that's silly. It is silly now, but at that time, my experience was so limited that I had no idea that they existed. So my experience as a special school teacher started with an explosion, I think.
Yes, my initial experience was very much like Joyce's. The great thing was I came from a normal school where children, I'm used to seeing children chasing, pushing, shoving, kicking a ball, to find myself at a school with wheelchairs. And if a person was late for his class, it was usually due to the chair pusher and not to the person himself. But the various handicaps surprised me. I didn't know there were such people about that could not walk, I could not talk, and could not see even. So it was a very great surprise to find myself amongst a population of physically handicapped people.
It's my first experience being away from Mum and Dad, but I think I quite enjoyed that period of time, being with other people.
The first class I had been made specially for me, I think, and the age range was 10 to 14, and the ability range was an IQ of about 50, I should think, up to possibly 120, to guess. I don't know for sure, but I should imagine that was the range. The range of handicaps was even greater. We had children in that class who were perfectly normal physically, and at the other end of the scale I had a boy who was hydrocephalic, confined to a wheelchair, couldn't use his hands, was practically blind, and was also a very slow learner. And I had about 10 children to start off with. No equipment, very little equipment. The headmaster was acting head at the time, and he had his class, his own class, so he had very little time to spare for newcomers, especially newcomers who didn't know anything. So I think that first term, I just kind of bumbled my way through. I don't think I did much good for the children, except to be nice to them and help them mark their work as they produced it, but I can't really say that I taught them. And I think there must have been a lot of teachers at that time in the same position. I don't think I was alone.
There was only 3, Drake, Grenville and Raleigh. There was the only 3 houses, and every Friday, an hour before we finished, whoever had the most points or behaviour in that week had an extra hour's play. So everybody was in the different houses, everybody else made sure that they behaved themselves. So it wasn't only the teachers that corrected you, it was the other pupils as well.
But I just remember feeling so different from my brother and sister. So, because nothing shared Down syndrome, nothing in common with the schools my brother and sister had. The children were far smaller and far narrower in the curriculum, just so totally different.
To go back to the cerebral palsy children who had no speech, when I used to give talks all through my teaching time to people, I always used to say that not being able to speak, to communicate, is the biggest handicap. The next biggest handicap is not being able to use your hands. and mobility that, you know, initially parents might think, oh, my child can't walk. That's a much lesser handicap, because educationally and in life generally, not being able to walk is not such a handicap as not being able to speak. In the early days, you used to try and get a clear yes-no response from the children. It might be, in the case of one little girl who could only blink her eyes, that she would blink once or twice, or blink for yes and not for no. Others used to hold their thumbs up for yes and do a shake of the hand for no. But a lot of the time it was 20 questions, which must have been so frustrating for the children. In my later time as a teacher, in my last 8 years, I taught all the children from 2 to 19 who had problems with language and communication. And the most successful method we had was a symbol of bliss symbols. This is a system of symbols which could be used in many different stages, at many different levels. For the young children, or for children who weren't very bright, if you just gave them a few symbols, it could give them some control of their environment. If they could indicate yes, no, if they wanted a drink, if they wanted to go home, mum, book, toy, a few basic things, right up to a lad who I did GCSE work with. I did his history papers, his geography papers, and with a symbol board and his intelligence, he could make anything, he could get over absolutely anything that he needed to.
From time to time, mention has been made of the emotional handicap from which most physically handicapped children suffer, and cerebral palsied children not the least, in addition to and parallel with their more obvious disability. It is in this battle with the hidden enemy that school and family must unite most carefully and closely. It is our experience that in the early special education of cerebral palsy children, the emotional handicap is the first handicap which must be treated. Until emotional stability has been conquered, physical and academic progress is minimal. Confidence of the right kind must be established, and sometimes I believe that the best intentioned parents can err the most. I refer, of course, to the overprotective parents who are often also overindulgent. It is our aim to help the parents to understand the necessity for insisting that the child is permitted to do as much as possible for himself. It is a sad but true fact that these children are destined to face an uphill fight all the way through life, and to this end, training and experience in obedience to the wishes of parents, kindly and firmly expressed, is a prerequisite for successful treatment, both in the physiotherapy department and in the classroom. We find our therapists are often our greatest allies at this stage. So often they can give parents something positive to do for the children long before the child is number conscious, reading ready, or at any of the recognised rungs on the educational stepladder where parental participation can be enjoyed. So often the educational pathway is hidden by the emotional fog. As a result, progress is delayed even with intelligent cerebral palsy children, and the stages of educational growth and physical maturity with the less gifted are often many years behind the norm.
The lessons, it was according to which classroom you were in. Some teachers were stricter than others, and I think I did tons and units all the way through school, and I was bored to tears with 100 tens and units, and I wanted to go on, but nobody would let me. It was as if I was stuck in 100 tens and units.
I used to look after the flat. Every day we had to clean it. We had a sitting room and a bedroom. We had to clean it every day, dust it, sweep it, vac it, and then prepare a meal and invite one of the teachers of your choice for the meal. And that was done most days. But round about September, we started doing the Christmas cakes for the different teachers. That was hectic.
So you're happy doing domestic science?
Yeah. As I say, I enjoyed the the best, where you had it like when you was in school, and you'd wash, you'd cook, you'd iron, and do all the general things, Polly, and then invite somebody in and cook for them, you know, and it would do your choice.
Would they call that?
And that was good to me because, as I say, it was a good education I had because at the age of 21 I got married, and 2 days before my daughter was born I lost my sight, and they just managed to do the one eye and give me little sight, so I've had to struggle. So having that education, it stood me all right for now.
Rest of it, we read story Janet and John books, the old Janet and John books, and read by teachers.
Whether I enjoyed going? Yeah, I think generally I enjoyed going. As we touched on earlier, I think educationally it probably wasn't up to that much, but I think that's down to the fact that they had to really cater for such sort of varying degrees of intelligence, capability, whatever you want to call it. They had such a wide scope of abilities that I think they had to sort of base it at the lowest level and go from there. So it did suffer academically, but I don't, on a personal basis, I don't think I suffered academically. But I was always into reading and everything, so started reading from a pretty early age. I think I could read at 4, so I was lucky enough to be able to sort of promote myself in that way, if you like. But I can understand why people did have complaints.
I don't remember much of the lessons. I remember sitting in a circle, reading flashcards, and then reading words on the card, and listening to stories. But I don't remember much about. I can remember being told off for laughing in the windy house. I think my memories from that time are quite happy ones.
So you see, we had a full range of facilities, but also the full range of academic attainment, full range of handicap. You know, there was everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
From 2 to 18, from absolute immobility to normal mobility. IQ range of from anything from 50, I should think, up to 140, easily.
Yes.
And the full range of handicaps, the polios, the TBs, the CPs, the athetoids, the ataxics.
Blindness, partially sighted.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you had children who'd got the lot, speech defects, immobility, poor hand control, poor sight, poor hearing, poor little mites. It's the lot.
Reading. We had a super library, but I was never the something to choose from. I used to get spoiled for choice. I love reading. I like reading Enid Blyton, Moby Dick, and later on Little Women, and Good Wives, and Heidi.
The establishment and organisation of the school has raised special problems of cooperation and coordination. The school is essentially a place where all forms of treatment aiming at the physical, mental and social rehabilitation of the handicapped child are concentrated and coordinated. No one aspect of the problem can take complete precedence over the others, although it must always be borne in mind that the establishment is a school. Whilst medical treatment, especially physiotherapy and speech therapy, is essential for the physical well-being of the child, within the limits at any time of the particular handicap at the stage of treatment reached, the ordered and progressive educational activities of the school varying from the more formal academic work to the practical activities of art, minor craft work, handicrafts, and domestic science, have a most important therapeutic value. The aim at all times is to develop the whole living potentiality of the individual child up to the limits of its mental and physical makeup, and to keep each child continually stretching out to fresh experiences and fresh achievements, however small in itself each fresh advance may seem to be. Thus, it is planned to take advantage of every possibility of the site to develop gardening and nature study, including such things as the keeping of pets and small stock, together with outdoor work in the natural realm, such as weather recording and local studies, which will be related to the academic work according to the individual abilities of each child. It has already been found by experience that these children delight in attempting and often achieving feats which are taken for granted in normal children, but which have hitherto been denied them.
I think in the late 50s, under Les Boaster, the head, it was a marvellous place. It was very innovative in special education. I know when we used to meet up with teachers from other parts of the country, they were very envious of the situation which we took for granted. For instance, the medical staff and the teaching staff and the orderlies, we all worked together, always. You had a timetable for when the children were going to physiotherapy, and the physiotherapist would consult with the teacher so that the children didn't always miss the same lessons. Well, when we talked to other people, this wasn't happening. They used to say, oh no, the physios come in and take them out just when they think they will. And the main thing was that it was such a marvellous, happy staff. I'm still in touch with more people and friends, close friends, with more people from that time of my teaching life than any other. And everybody says the same. This was largely due to Mr. Boasted, I think, who was a super head. And as he said, we worked hard and we played hard. You had to. It was hard work, but once you'd gone into it, I wouldn't change it, and I stayed in it for 35 years until I retired.
Happy memories of Baginton, happier than Sherborne, even though it was an older school and a bit decrepit. I do remember while I was there, my brothers who were 2 years younger going to Mount Nod, and they always used to bring homework home, and that's something I never did from Baginton. Never had any homework. And same with Sherborne afterwards as well, because their homework mounted as they went to Woodlands, and I still very rarely brought homework home, but they always seemed to have a pile of it.
Could you say something about what the lessons were like?
Pardon?
Could you say something about what the lessons were like?
Well, I'll tell you one I didn't like, and that was when I was in the sewing class, and I couldn't do any knitting, but I was made to do some knitting, and I've never forgot that. I was hopeless. But the domestic science, that was okay. They called me up every time, open day for laundry and that. I used to be on the washing, things like that. As I say, I more or less done a lot of running around and helping out. As far as lessons, I don't remember much about doing them.
English, science, maths?
I did a bit, but it's that long time ago,
Yeah, we did some art. I think it was collages and water drawings. We used to do drawings with watercolours and then soak them with water and let them run, and let the colours all run, which was quite good. It was quite fun at the time.
All we had was your maths, geography, history, science, woodwork, modelling, domestic science, gardening, physio. That's about it on lessons, but I was more interested to get you mobile when you left rather than do your education part of it. If your parents was getting on in life and they wasn't around, what would you do when you left school? The last 2 years I was there, all I did every day was domestic science, cookery. So they could give me an education when I left, and that's all I did. And I was happy to do that, because I loved it, I did. Doing cakes, Christmas cakes, everything for the teachers. But education-wise, it was not A1, but it was good. It learnt you something. I mean, I couldn't even read the Telegraph when I left school. I was way down on that. I was just way behind. I don't know whether it's because I started late or not, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. I mean, I started, around 56, left when I was 16, 40 years ago. Ooh. It'd been open about 12 months when I started. I didn't start till I was about 8, so I missed quite a bit by going in and out of hospital.
The one part of the education which has stayed with me a lifetime, and that was the domestic science. And everything that Miss Griffiths taught us has stayed with me all my life, and I'm very house proud.
The only thing I didn't enjoy was the arts class. I didn't really enjoy that. But the other one I did, Mr. Murphy, the model aeroplanes, that was brilliant. How he made them planes out of balsa wood, well, absolutely brilliant that was.
Many of you will know the delight shown by some of your children on being permitted to feel the sand or soil running between the fingers, or the experience of rolling on the grass, far more basic a joy than that provided by the most expensive chromium-plated roadster.
I remember music and movement classes we used to do. They used to clear the class, all the desks would be moved out of the way, and they'd play this tape, and we'd all go round in circles in the class, and we were supposed to dance as we went round. Never very successful for me. I was never into that sort of thing. Woodwork was always good. Can't remember who did that now. Can't remember who the woodwork teacher was at all. But I used to enjoy it. And top school was good.
Oh yeah, this is my school. To just learn you more, you know. I used to love this school, but as I say, now I used to learn you.
So you were disappointed?
I'll stick to you. Yeah, I say I used to learn you, but you never used to sort of. I know they had other in the classroom, but I thought they could spend so much time with each trying to say, but no, they wouldn't. As I say, at dinner times and play times, they used to have you in his, especially Mr. Cordwell. Do you remember Mr. Cordwell?
Yeah, I know
They used to have you in the dinner times or play times, want to know your home life and things like that, instead of sort of learning you know, but you had no, well, I didn't think they used to learn you what you wanted to learn, unless it was me, I don't know, but as I say, I spoke to other members of the school we used to go, and they were the same as what I did, but it was really, I used to like the school, but as I say, the education was really terrible. I mean, it was a smashing school. I used to, well, when I first started, I didn't like it, but when I left, I broke my heart because it was so, but I just didn't know what was wrong with the teach. Some of the teachers were all right, but certain few I just couldn't get on with. And well, we used to have geography and that, but they used to learn you sort of, well, as it was me, as I say, but I just don't know what went wrong. Domestic science and needlework, that's the only two really they used to learn you to do. But others, that's what I used to, like us reading and writing, I never used to stick with it. I know there's others in the class, but they never used to stick and help you to read or write. I mean, as now, I know I'm getting on, I can't, if it comes to filling forms in, I can't do it because I can't spell. I know I probably could have gone to college to learn, but I just don't want to go there. But I thought the school used to sort of learn you that. But as I say, when it comes to filling forms, and I just can't do them because I've never done anything like that to learn you how to do anything like that.
What about your parents? Were they invited to the school very often?
Not really. It was just the opening, but Mum and Dad never used to go. I haven't got a dad now. My dad died in January, passed away. But they never used to, I think my dad come up once or twice, but I think he was really disappointed. He used to learn, you know. But my mum couldn't come because she had a big family. Didn't go. She couldn't, because I had some little brothers and sisters at home. She couldn't come. But I think my dad sort of come up.
Right. What was? Do you remember Mr. Bowstead?
Yeah, Mr. Hotley, Mr. Dack, Mr. Stringer. I know all the teachers, but as I say, some of them I never used to. Mr.
Murphy, was it?
Mr.
I saw
Jones.
Mr. Jones. I didn't know him. He'd probably left before you, but Mr. Cordell was a heart too, wasn't he? I think Mr. Cordell.
What about Margaret Gaffney, the doctor?
As I say, some of the teachers left, but I can remember them vaguely. There's a Mr. Murphy there, Mrs. Whitehouse, I think.
Maths day was all done on a blackboard, and it was more or less mental arithmetic. We did the times tables, and then it was mental arithmetic or takeaways, divide. But like nowadays, they've got calculators. I think we had in the head, and if you've had it, you're stuck. And that's it. But you had to work it out yourself. No, nothing like that.
Swimming lessons, being taken to swimming lessons with Miss Case, and she used to be a real bully, and I used to hate.
Fellow.
Oh God, yeah, I used to hate the water. Used to absolutely dread going to swimming lessons, but you were more or less forced to go, and that sort of carried on right into Sherborne as well. I can swim, but yeah, I don't mind it. I just don't like people pushing me into doing something that I didn't want to. I used to like to hold on to the side, and she wouldn't have any of that. First of all, we went to Canley, wasn't it? Yeah, Canley. There was a pool at Canley that we used to go to by Canley Teacher Training College. Yeah. And then after that we went to Livingston, I think. Livingston. Yeah.
We loved the gardening because it was round the edges for a smoke.
We did the 5 basics with English, maths, history, science and home economics.
Wasn't the cooking for the school meals done?
Oh, the meals were cooked on the premises.
So it's very comprehensive.
Yeah. I suppose the only real philosophy of the school was that it was a kind of a family unit. So you had the big children looking after the little children, and the little children kind of looking up to the big children, which was a very, very good thing, I think, for most of them. It was something that those children, the older children, certainly wouldn't have had in a normal school, and was one of the positive things of special school life.
We were in quite small groups, and I used an electric typewriter instead of a pen, so that's really me upbeat. I enjoyed that.
We worked hard. In those days, you were the teacher, and if somebody wanted the loo, you had to ring down to bottom school and hope that an orderly would get up before it was too late. At lunchtime, when they rested, we used to put the beds out and put them on the beds and get them up again. But basically, it was you did your normal teaching as you would any children.
You got the atmosphere that you were in a school, just the same, that they were children that wanted educating. Yeah. And very often you forgot at the moment their particular handicap. And the great pleasure they had in completing either a sum right or even writing a sentence correctly. So it was always a school.
Yeah, people used to come into school, I don't know how you can do this kind of work,
yes.
People would say. I haven't heard that for some time. I don't know how you can work with these children. And you see, you don't see children with physical handicaps. You see a normal child with a disability. They were seeing the handicap without seeing the child. Yes.
Yes, sitting at the desk, you were all school children.
Yeah.
I always remember, as I said before, I remember your back very well because you stuck above the rest. But they were just a mass of school children. The wheelchairs were one side. So they were just children in the school. That's all they were.
You said about the children making friends with the children with a similar disability.
Yes.
Yeah. And you still had children who really didn't relate to anybody. They were kind of little loners.
Common factor, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The orderlies sometimes took the classes as well. If a teacher was delayed or off sick, one of the orderlies would look after the class but not actually give them lessons as such. They would have to do work what one of the other teachers give them, but the orderly just sat in there just to keep order. That's about all. But very rare they was off sick, very rare.
The authority always have it in mind that in respect of these children, much more even than with normal children, a pleasant environment has a therapeutic value, and conversely, drab surroundings can have a repressive influence.
At lunchtime, because we had a lot of children who needed help with feeding, it was the common practice for all members of staff, from the carpenter to the headmaster, if you like to put it like that, you know, the medical staff, the teaching staff, the orderlies, to eat with the children. And I think this had a lot of benefits in the social interaction with the staff and the children, as well as helping them.
Independent living you're talking about. Well, we had a domestic science room, and a lot of the independent living would have been taught in domestic science. There was a flat in there. I'm not really quite sure what went on in there, except they produced very good scones and things like that. But I can remember going on a course once where the lecturer who was supposed to be talking about independent living didn't turn up, and the organiser of the course asked several of us what we did that was special. And I said, well, we don't do anything special. The children just do CS. This would be before, CSC came after the Baginton days, but they learned their cookery and they learned how to clean the little flat and so on. So that was a question of independent living.
The deficiency in their education was lack of experiences of life.
Yeah.
Because naturally the parents didn't take them out. So I tried anyway to try and organise more outings and see things outside, even onto the roadway to see the traffic.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I can remember the first time I took a group out, we only went into town to the market. They were going to do their Christmas shopping and they all brought a little bit of money to get something for their mums. And I was amazed that some of the children had never been in town before. Others, of course, were quite capable of going into town by themselves. But at that time, with the transport as it was, and very few people had cars, it was extremely difficult for a mother to take a child in a chair into town. But so that was a wonderful experience for them. Then of course we had the school outings. There was always an outing every year, and it was always carefully thought out so that the children in wheelchairs would be included in everything.
There was always a difficulty with the school outings to accommodate the needs of a child in a handicap in a school chair, because it wasn't so simple as saying go to the toilet or go somewhere. They couldn't go. They had to be gone.
You know, I hadn't actually got a disability where I was obstructed from anything.
So the staff used to just ask you.
You know, I used to go get at somebody's wheelchair. They was all named on the back.
Yeah.
Take one, bring it back, and if I got time, go back and bring them back. You know, and take them to the bus at night, so they could load them up. Yeah.
You just volunteered to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't compelled to do it, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That's my way. I care for people, whether they care for me, but I enjoy doing what I did.
It would be impossible to close this short article without some reference to the children, who are the sole reason for the existence of the school. Their physical handicaps range from cerebral palsy of the most disabling kind to such defects as congenital heart disease or haemophilia, which do not necessarily reveal themselves in the child's physique or actions. Their IQs range from above normal down to the borderline of educability, where their social backgrounds are equally varied. All of them, without exception, show a happiness and a purposeful activity in school, which amply repays the patience and affection which they find there. Just as with other children, however, problems of discipline sometimes arise, which are not always easily solved, but these are difficulties which, once surmounted, are merely incidents in the process of building up a tradition which will, in due time, give a corporate life to the school.
The teachers would treat you the same way as they treat a normal person. They wouldn't do anything different. If you was misbehaving, you get a clip round the ear, as simple as that. I mean, if you misbehave too much, I mean, like one of my mates did, Peter, I got a right bloody mouth off him. I got a right smack in the teeth. I was egging him on. I can't remember what it was about, but he was on the top field in playtime. I was egging him on for some reason, and the next thing, his fist come out and went smack straight in my mouth, and he was in front of the headmaster. He didn't use the cane, he'd got one, but he always threatened you with it, but he never ever used it. I knew he didn't use it, and a lot of people knew he didn't use it because it all had cobwebs on it behind. but he used it there as a deterrent, and he always used to smack the desk with it. But I've never known him to use it. He was very fair, and I've never known him to use it.
One of the very special positive things about that school was that the medical input. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
We had the school nurse,
Yes.
the doctor who came, once a fortnight, once a month?
Once a fortnight. Yeah.
Once a fortnight. And then the paediatrician, the consultant paediatrician would come once a month, and the surgeon, the orthopaedic surgeon would come once a month. And that was a great advantage because the whole input was there. The mother or father was there, and all these medical people. The headmaster was there, and there was an interchange of information. The doctor would call in the class teacher if there was something that she could add. The physiotherapist and the speech therapist was there if required. That was, I think that must have been unique to Baginton, because we certainly didn't get it when I went to the school in the north.
I remember the clinics more terrible than Baginton. I was in Baginton for 3 years. I don't remember seeing the doctors, but to share on it, made me quite nervous. I didn't like to see Mr. Penrose and the other one. He was the orthopaedic surgeon.
I remember the consultants and the doctors coming around the school, probably twice a year for me. We'd all be lined up on the beds, and they'd move from one bed to another to discuss your case and what was going on. My consultant was Dr. Penrose, or Mr. Penrose. He didn't like to be called doctor, he used to go mad. And he'd stand at the end of the bed and feel your feet and bend your joints or whatever he had to do. And he'd be looking down his glasses at you, over his glasses at you. He used to wear the half glasses, very intimidating. And he'd never talk directly to you. And he'd never talk directly to your parents either, who were always there. They'd talk to the school nurse and whoever else they had to talk to. And they'd make decisions, make notes, and then they'd just move on to the next bed. And that'd be it. That'd be the end of your consultation, and you put your trousers back on or your shirt, and off you'd go, and that'd be it for 6 months. And you'd never know quite what they'd decided. It's a strange feeling. You never felt that you were able to ask them anything, because it was almost as if it was nothing to do with you. You were just there to be seen, and that was it. And they'd just wander off. Next bed.
Yeah, I saw Mr. Perry Williams, which seems like light years ago now, who was the what was he? Can't remember now. I don't know whether he was a paediatrician or I think he was like a consultant paediatrician at the time. But it was just like for a general chat, things like that. I don't think anything came of it. I think he used to sort of more or less go around and visit everybody in the school, and just I found it a little bit of a waste of time because it was like just a general chat. He'd just ask you how you were and you'd say okay, and it was left at that basically.
After the dinner, you used to lie down in a rest period. I remember a lad I used to talk to a lot, Colin Allen his name was, and he had a hole in the heart. We very friendly. And after the summer holidays, we came back and he just wasn't there anymore. And I'd heard that he'd died, and that used to be a regular occurrence. But eventually it just means nothing. They're just another face that's disappeared. I mean, for children, I know if one of my son's friends died, he'd be absolutely mortified, but you just become blasé about it. I don't think you mean to. As kids, you don't become blasé, but it's just an accepted part of your childhood. Friends disappear, and they're just not there anymore, and you just accept that your friends just disappear. I don't even think you think of it as a death anymore. They're just gone.
And we had the physio, of course. I remember the physio and speech therapy at Baginton, which continued to share more. And the physio seemed very aggressive, and I can remember screaming the place down at the hands of Mrs. Hawes. I think Mrs. Hawes was quite notorious. She always looked quite fierce, never quite smiled. And there's speech therapy. That's all right, one-to-one.
And Mr. Pebbody, he was the gym teacher. Used to go in with him one afternoon for exercises and that, just to get you mobile really, just to see what you was capable of doing.
Did you ever have physiotherapy?
Yeah, Mr. Ingram, who I think was at Baginton and then came with us to Sherborne as well. But yeah, I used to have breathing exercises with him, and he used to be slapping on my back all the time. But, yeah, most of the memories I've got of that again are from Sherborne.
Yes, well, as I said, we cooperated over the timetables, but also you knew what sort of physiotherapy the children were doing, so you could carry it on throughout all the rest of the day in the classroom. And a classic example was one of my children who was about 6 or 7, who was just learning to do reciprocal crawling. And so when we had the Christmas play, we were doing different toys and animals, and he was an elephant, and he crawled reciprocally across the stage beautifully, and the physiotherapist was thrilled to bits. We had the clinics weekly in school with the orthopaedic and the paediatric doctors, and the teachers were always asked to fill in a report. And more often than not, were asked to go into the clinic so that the education viewpoint could be put as well as the physical aspect.
We did have economics the same as a mainstream school was, but there wasn't any specialised training. I didn't have to be specialised in it. And just no freedom there to explore your own abilities. I think I hated PE the most because we all had to do PE, which I always thought was daft because, I always felt left out with PE because I was less able than the other kids. It's interesting, isn't it, because there seems to be a dichotomy there. On the one hand, I'm saying we were overprotected, but then being made to do PE. Yeah. I can't think of the words to express that.
I did to start with, yeah, I was lost. I just didn't know what to do. Being as I am, you you just don't know what to do until I went down to the youth centre, as they called it then, and they started me on a job, a rehabilitation course at Torrington Avenue.
Everything was done for you. You didn't have to think for yourself at all. You were led every inch of the way, I think. I suppose part of that was because I did need somebody with me all the time, physically speaking. But even so, I think they could have made more effort for you to explore yourself a bit more, to help you become more independent sort of mentally and psychologically rather than physically.
No, I don't feel ashamed at all. It's life, that's it. You're left with a disability. There's nothing you can do about it. Nothing you can do about it.
In the last 2 years, I think we were taught just basics, and it wasn't enough for later on. It wasn't enough for life. It wasn't enough to be able to go into a shop, shopping. And oh boy, you got a rude awakening when you went out into the big wide world and tried to get a job. But luckily, I was one of these children that could go on learning after I left school and became a learning adult. And that's gone on. And I'm 62 this year, and I'm still learning. I left school completely unprepared with what was coming next. Special education was completely sheltered. I always felt totally different from the outside world, having a brother and sister who went to the same school as each other, and I, the third one, went to a different school. I felt quite inferior to the rest of the world, and then I felt extremely protected, and there was no preparation whatsoever for being released onto the outside world. I did find that very frightening, the fact that I was going out, leaving school, feeling no different than I did several years before.
But as I say, I used to like going there, but I broke me out when I left. But
yeah, well, with jobs and the careers officer, the choices they offered us was limited. It was into engineering for one or two, or an office job. But I decided to go into further education anyway at Hereward College. I intended to become a draftsman, but you had to do 3 years on an engineering course first, and I stuck with engineering after that. When
I left school and I went to Tile Hill, it blended in really nicely because you had Tile Hill College and Hereward College together, and everyone used to interact with each other anyway, so that sort of dampened the differences down again, if you like, that were sort of raised at school.
The youth employment officer used to come in the child's final year at school, do full assessments, etc. And he would also take groups out to see various factories and places of work where they could... it wasn't as good as the present system where you have work placement, work experience, but it was that was almost pioneering, wasn't it? And another great thing was that you could say to a prospective employer, this boy has been disadvantaged in his educational career. He hasn't got any qualifications to offer you, but by gum, he's a good lad. And he's got this and this about him. And there were no CSCs then. There were O-levels, and what was the other? GC, no. What was the other qualification that came between nothing?
AS.
Hmm?
AS.
No.
I remember CSEs and GCSE over.
No, it must have been CSEs then.
Yeah.
Funny enough, we never talked about disabilities. It is never mentioned. I don't think it did any. No, I don't think it did anything to help me see my disability any different to if I'd gone to mainstream school.
It was, just trying to think, was it around about 1980 when one of the Education Acts anyway, they decided that the children, the special schools would be run down, and that the more able children would go into normal mainstream education. But they were finding that very difficult because there were so many things that had to be done. They had to put extra help in. They had to put ramps in. And even then, sometimes they could only have one school out of 3 that was specially equipped for the handicapped. I think it was in Sheffield that they had a school, a normal school with a physically handicapped unit, or a unit for physically handicapped children. And even there they didn't integrate very well. It was very difficult to decide exactly what to do for the best.
I think that there will always be children who are neurologically impaired, perhaps who can't speak or who have spatial difficulties, who will need good special education, and I stress good, because you know bad special education is no good to anyone. I think latterly at Sherborne had the best of both worlds, really, because children did go to Camden Court for certain lessons. Talking to friends who teach in mainstream schools, when they have what I would consider a very likely handicapped child there, they have an assistant for that child who goes around with them. Now, in a special school, that child would be one of the more able, and not only would she be looking after herself, but she'd be helping the others as well. So I think there's that to be said as well. I think at the moment, when some children are in mainstream schools, money is put into helping 1 or 2 children, whereas in a special school, they're in a group and you've got one person doing that for a whole group of children.
I can remember a boy with a very severe speech handicap standing on the platform reading for morning assembly. He would never ever have been able to do that in a normal primary school, let alone a secondary school. And he was one of the lads there, you know. That was a great achievement. And I've found that over and over again.
Yes.
That in a normal school there'd be a little fish in a very, very big ocean. In a special school they came into their own as a personality in their own right. And they all worked, well, the idea was that they all worked at their own pace and they were encouraged to develop themselves to the best of their ability.
The best? Oh, Christmas parties. Christmas parties, because they didn't have them for the senior pupils. They didn't always have them in school hours. They had them on a Friday evening in the assembly hall on the Friday evening. But they had them from, I think it was 7 till about 10 o'clock, because you had to get the last bus home, but you had to make your own way there and your own way back. But that was one of the good things. I used to enjoy them. But I liked everything really from the school, but I enjoyed domestic science most of all.
And if I had sight now, I would like to try and help them, because there's a lot of things that has happened wherever I've been, you know, as far as people can't help themselves, be themselves and things like that. Didn't go down with me very well, you know.
And that was at Baginton?
Well, not only Baginton, even when I moved on. And also, we had a reunion about 1965. That is when I met my husband that I've got at a reunion. And I've been with him 35 years. I got him in the December, got engaged in the April, got married September, and I was expecting my first child in December. And I didn't know the gentleman at school.
It's one thing to be called names and different things by able bodies outside school, but I was also called within the school, called names within the school, because I'm at the toys, and that's why I found awfully developing, because I thought that even if you put in the common names, what do people gonna be like outside in the proper able part? What are they gonna be like? You just consider yourself bottom of the pile almost.
I was 7 when Baginton opened. It was my first school. There were 20 of us to begin with, and we all got on well together. I liked the school and the teachers. My teacher was Mr. Caldwell, and I was in Drake House. Our classroom was the art room. I liked art. I painted with brushes and made thumb pots. We had a potter's wheel, but I never used it. My favourite lesson was music. We gave 3 concerts at an old people's home. I had a bit of help and played the piano with one finger. The Lord Mayor was at one of the concerts, and I got my name in the paper. I remember the first Christmas when they picked me up. Father Christmas was on the bus. It was annoying not to be able to move and speak properly. In speech therapy, the exercises I did involved sitting by a mirror and watching myself talk. I did this for half an hour 3 times a week. I had 2 physiotherapists, Mrs. Hall and Mr. Pebbody. They said they'd make me a lot better, but they didn't. There was a group for cerebral palsied people, but we were allowed to mix with the others. We had 1 helper each at mealtime. I didn't like the food at Baginton. In English, we used to write ourselves, with a big pencil. They couldn't read my writing, so I had to read it back to them. Mr. Murphy put on films for us every Friday night in the main hall. He also made models and ran a model club that my dad helped with. All the people in wheelchairs had designated wheelchair pushers, who took us to class every morning when we got off the bus. Then at home time, took us back to the bus. I left the school in 1962. I've never worked, but I'd like to have done. I wasn't taught independent living at Baginton, but 10 years ago when I went to Woodway Lane, they taught me there, and now I have my own flat.
But really it was a great place to be at. It's a great place to teach.
Yeah.
It's a great place to learn about humanity.
The question is sometimes raised whether the considerable expenditure of money and effort involved is really worthwhile. In a society such as ours, based on Christian principles, every individual, handicapped or otherwise, has a value, and that not merely a value to the community in general, but one inherent in the individual as a person. From this standpoint, quite apart from the economic value to the community of the training given to these handicapped children, no reasonable effort and expenditure can be less than worthwhile. There is an obligation upon the community to ensure that these children get the best out of life within the limits of their handicap and grow up into self-reliant, responsible and, so far as possible, self-supporting members of the community. This aim amply justifies the establishment of the Baginton Fields Day Special School for the Physically Handicapped.
I'm Simon Grant, I'm head teacher of Baginton Fields School, and the date is November the 11th, 2002. I've been head teacher at Baginton Fields for 2 years. I've been listening to the accounts of staff and pupils who attended the Baginton Fields as it was then in the 1950s and 1960s. And I think what's really struck me is that some of the comments made by students and staff do echo some of the curriculum activities that we take part in today. There was obviously a great emphasis on personal skills and development of the individual. And one of the comments made by one of the members of staff is very, very similar to the overall aims that we have for pupils in school at present. One of the very big differences that I have noted is that we do have to teach the national curriculum. That means that we are required to teach 11 statutory subjects, academic subjects, to pupils aged 11 to 16. And within that, we have to squeeze, on occasions, the pupils' own development within their personal physiotherapy programs or their speech therapy, occupational therapy. And the emphasis has obviously changed, because the information I've got with regard to the previous Baginton Fields school is that those aspects of personal development and personal progression were obviously central to the reason why a pupil or student was actually in school. And the curriculum was arranged around physiotherapy or consultation with medics or development of mobility. Now, there are some staff in school who rightly so feel that the emphasis had moved away from personal independence skills, life skills as we call them, and that has not been for the best. I think what has to be said is that pupils in school do have similar needs to those young people who were here in the 1950s and 1960s, and therefore the overall aims for them leaving school would not be too dissimilar. As it happens, when we do have pupils reaching 16, they can stay at Baginton Fields until they are 19, and the emphasis of the curriculum tends to revert, so that youngsters are now looking at independence, mobility skills, independence and life skills, and also communication. And that really forms the transition programme for our youngsters in their last 3 years in school. So we have an emphasis initially on academic subjects within Key Stages 3 and 4, which covers years 11 to 16 years of age. And then we have this reversion back to what we consider to be the very extremely important aspects of a young person's development ready for adulthood. It is indicative that special needs has progressed a great deal in terms of how we actually approach youngsters' needs. What is obvious is that youngsters that we have in school at the moment may carry different definitions of their special needs. We do have a lot of youngsters with communication difficulties and autism and challenging behaviour, and I'm quite sure that those youngsters were also present in the original Baginton Fields school. I also feel that the means of treating young people with communication difficulties and physical difficulties is probably not far removed now from as it was then. I think what has changed is the amount of technology that is at present in our schools. There is a huge amount of technology available to our pupils now, enables them to communicate and also to enable their mobility around school. And I think advancements in medical science have resulted in pupils now staying in school and the life expectancy of those pupils being increased, whereas in the past I think those pupils may not have reached adulthood. In conclusion, it's quite obvious that Baginton Fields as it was then was certainly breaking the mould, and was certainly at the forefront of development for young people with special educational needs. I'd like to think that remains the case, and there are initiatives in school that do imply that we do look towards developing pupils' special needs and also maintaining their development as they go through school, so that when they are eventually ready to leave school, there are options available to them. And that can only come about from the input, as it was then, from dedicated staff that we have in school. Ratio of pupils to staff I think will probably have been reduced. We still have around about 95 pupils in school, but we now have around about 50 full-time staff in school to actually accommodate their needs. I've been very impressed with the actual accounts of what's been going on in school, certainly from 50 years ago, and I think some of the problems still remain. We still take an hour to pick up pupils from around Coventry City and bring them into school. We're still restricted by the number of pupils we can actually get on a bus, and we're still very conscious of the way in which it is very important that whole families and professionals and school collaborate to ensure that the best is actually generated for their young people. And I just hope that professionals within Coventry will recognise the work that's actually going on across the professional boundaries and continue to ensure that our pupils do glean the best from their school years, which of course are some of the most important that they will experience.
This CD was made possible by a grant from Coventry City Council's Small Arts Grants. Thanks to everyone at the Enterprise Club Coventry. Thanks also to Lizzie Allagers-Warren and Liz Doole of Coventry City Archive. The extract from Education was read by Dawn Morris and the headmaster by Tony Holmes.